Before we get into the episode, I have a quick favor to ask for our loyal listeners. If you would, please rate and review the show over on Apple Podcasts. It really helps with discovery and reaching new listeners. That's key to the mission of Startup Caucus and growing our innovation community. Now on to the show. I'm Eric Wilson, managing partner of Startup Caucus, an investment fund and incubator for Republican campaign technology. Welcome to the Business of Politics show. On this podcast, we bring you into conversation with the entrepreneurs who build best-in-class political businesses, the funders who provide the capital, and the operatives who put it all together to win campaigns. Our guest today is Will Ritter, the co-founder and CEO of POOLHOUSE. POOLHOUSE is a political media and creative agency based in Richmond, Virginia. Will has a very long resume working with campaigns and candidates. Will and his co-founder launched POOLHOUSE back in 2013. They've most recently probably come onto your radar, if you hadn't already heard of them, as the creative team behind Governor-elect Glenn Youngkin's campaign in Virginia. In this episode, we discuss the transition from campaigner to entrepreneur, how to stand out in a crowded market, and dealing with challenges in a new business. Will, you were director of advance on the 2012 Romney-Ryan campaign. And so for those who might not be familiar with that role, you were responsible for the physical presence of the campaign, including candidate schedules, travel, and events. And so I think it's fair to say it's not a seamless transition from the role that you had then to the role that you have now. So talk about how did you navigate that leap?
I actually got my start as an intern in Governor Romney's office. I was given the job because my resume was put at the top of the pile because I had the same last name as the director of operations' girlfriend, and he thought we might be related. So that is how I got into politics, completely luck. And then I spent a good number of years just hustling and keeping my mouth shut.
Hoping no one would notice.
Right. I just listened a lot and hustled and tried to make myself as useful as possible and watch the people around politics and around Governor Romney. And I've always been fascinated and I was a fan of Governor Romney. So it was a tough job and a fun job. I had one suit that was pretty threadbare after the administration, and then we jumped right into a presidential campaign. But yeah, I was the director of advance on Romney 2012. His second run, I was his buy-in in 2008. You summed it up perfectly. That's about the physical presence, the rallies, the operations of everything. But it does allow you to really get on the ground level and see how the nuts and bolts of a campaign are put together, because that aspect really touched a lot of different aspects of politicking. So I was fortunate to be able to get a little taste of what almost everybody on the campaigns were doing. And it's kind of just it's gone on from there.
You got to take a look at all the different aspects of a campaign. And then you said, where I want to start a business, where I want to put my hat in the ring is this media business, TV ads, things like that. And so that market that you entered, for our listeners to understand, the TV and digital video production and advertising represents the single largest expenditure in political campaigns. So as a result, it's very competitive. What was missing in the industry based on what you saw that gave you the conviction to say, we're going to go ahead and do this? I don't care how competitive it is.
Yeah. I'll go way back. The first thing to do is just, for all your listeners, is just do everything you can to fight the imposter syndrome that follows us all around. Mm-hmm. And trust your own gut and trust that your ideas are as good as the next guy's. You just might not have as much, experience and wisdom, but you can make up for that with hustle, and you'll get it quickly enough. I think that in our particular case, we have a pretty stupid name, I would say, a pretty funny name. POOLHOUSE is not what the name of a lot of firms have. It usually involves an eagle or at least the word red.
Some sort of warfare reference.
Yes.
Yeah.
But POOLHOUSE, we never really changed it because it was so essential to our kind of origin story, which, if I can bore people with, was a POOLHOUSE on vacation we had to take in the 2012 campaign. My friend Tim O'Toole, creative genius on the Romney campaign, he was going around with Romney, was not the ad guy for all intents and purposes, but with his camera and his laptop was filming stories of people who had been left out of the Obama economy and was doing behind the scenes things and fun things that was for YouTube. And you watch these and they were cinematic and they would be put together by one guy with a brain. And we had some kind of fun projects where I remember Allentown was a metal factory in Pennsylvania during the general election right at the beginning. And I heard from some advanced guys that was now a gutted out metalworking factory where Obama had spoken just a few years before, talking about how it was going to be reinvigorated. Well, I talked my way into this empty factory. We got some footage inside this factory, and we did an ad that basically contrasted Obama's rhetoric with the reality. And that was done with campaign help, and pretty much two guys who were both under 30 had an idea and executed on it. And it was after that, there was this opening when it came to digital video, YouTube, you have to feed the beast. But that's a really creative labor-intensive job. So we figured in this POOLHOUSE, I said, there's an opportunity here that we could have a seat at the table in campaigns that would let us in, and people would start to ask the question, well, wait a minute, you can do this on YouTube. Why can't you do this in 30 seconds or 60 seconds on television? And the answer is, of course, we could. So that's pretty much been the trajectory since then. If we focus on the creative, got rid of the imposter syndrome, and also I think the major question we always have is, why do political ads have to be awful? I would always be struck by the fact that for a short period of time, just before an election, all of a sudden the populace is inundated with low quality, low concept people and politicians looking directly into a camera and saying 70 words. And when you take the amount of money and the amount of attention, the amount of importance that these ads play, and compare that to what it seemed the amount of production value, the amount of creative labor that was going into them, it was a mismatch. Coca-Cola wants to do something. They'll invest tons and tons of money and time to making this kind of perfect art product, where on campaigns, it's almost an afterthought. Hey, let's do a shoot leaning against the fence or in front of a fireplace, and all that matters is the words that we say. So we thought we would come at it from a different angle, and that has paid off at least this far.
Will, hearing you say that, put it in terms that I talk about with startup founders all the time. I just hadn't thought about it in this context, which is the lean startup methodology, the minimum viable product. So you said we can make TV ads for campaigns that don't suck. But how do we start doing that? We go in and do something that no one else cares about, right? Which is YouTube and the social video and things like that. And just do a really kick-ass job on that to lever up and earn our seat at the table. And so I think that's a really important lesson, right? Because you had the vision, but in order to get there from here, you had to build some trust, build some credibility and things like that. With that lesson, during those first couple of cycles, what were some of your biggest challenges or hurdles, and how did you overcome them?
The advantage that we had was we could focus on niche and on something that we do very well demonstrably, and not try to be all things to all people, and not say, well, okay, sure, the advertising is the vehicle, but honestly, you're just paying me because I'm a genius politically. Well, why do you have to do that? Why do you have to pretend that you know all parts of politics and know all of everything? You just focus on our part and let the polling and let the data and the strategy inform that and pitch some great ideas. I'd say the challenge was honestly trying to stay focused and not be all things to all people, and be able to admit that there were some things that we didn't know enough about and defer to other people on the team. So being a team player and producing a great product.
Yeah, I think that's also another really important lesson. I just know from campaigns that we've worked on, right? You filled a very specific role and were able to work alongside people who are now your competitors as you sort of built out the portfolio, the highlight reel. Again, I just think that's a really important lesson for folks is you want to get your foot in the door so you can start pressing that advantage. So it's one thing to be like, okay, we're on a campaign and we're going to go down to Allentown and film a video that goes on YouTube. What were some of the just surprises of running a business that you just wouldn't have seen before you went out and did it?
I come from a family of entrepreneurs, metal manufacturing in Worcester, Massachusetts. I would watch my dad run a business that was very much ins and outs, right? We have a contract for this much product. We need this much metal on the ground. It's going to cost this much to have the labor produce it. And I was always kind of keeping my foot down and thinking, well, if I was moving metal, how would we do this? And that means, no, I'm not going to go out and hire 20 people because we had some success. Let's focus on how we can kind of build slowly and build a sturdy company that has the people on it that each have a unique talent and can keep the trains running, but not go for the moon and just kind of build slowly. I would say that has done me well so far and done us well. With Tim and I, and now we have Danny Loud as partner. We have always kind of looked at it as like, this is a business, and there's the ways that we can provide value, and we will continue to make money if we continue to provide value for our clients and get word of mouth referrals. But if it doesn't seem to make sense, it typically doesn't really make sense. You just have to say, like, I don't know why we would do that just because other companies are doing that.
I just think that is such a hard thing to do when you're growing a business, right? And we deal this on the product side with companies all the time. Is features creep. It's so hard to get those first few customers to your app or software, and then they're like, "Oh, well, could you do this? Could you do that?" And you really want to make them happy, but in doing so and adding those features, you lose sight of what the vision is. So, well, how do you do that? How do you say no to someone who's like giving you business? You want to make them happy and you want to keep working with them.
I think that having a little bit of humility and having good people that you work with, I bring you up as a perfect example, right? Somebody wants to come to us and it's a lot of digital strategy. We do place robust digital campaigns, and we've grown that side of our business quite a bit. I've had the humility to say, look, this is one that I think that these one or two guys or gals actually have a better process in place for. And being able to have the guts to say, I'm going to do that, and I think that will come back karma-wise to us if we treat people right, and we're not always trying to see how we could cling on to every bit of influence and every dollar. But at the end of the day, when a candidate feels like a candidate for a campaign, right, we do a lot of advocacy work, they feel like it all came together as a win. It's kind of the victory raises all boats, right? And no one is going to say, well, we won, but these guys should have done it all in-house. Instead, they suggested other very good people who also did a good job. Like, that doesn't happen.
What's crazy is, so politics are zero sum. There is a winner and there is a loser. That doesn't mean our business has to be. And we really operate from this scarcity mindset, and having an abundant mindset gives us the power to sort of say, hey, rising tide lifts all boats. You're listening to the Business of Politics show. I'm speaking with Will Ritter, who is the co-founder and CEO of POOLHOUSE. They've just come off the most exciting race in the country, and we're learning about how he started and grew the business. Will, I want to drill down into a really in the weeds, actionable insight. For a few years, you used the poolhousedigital.com URL and branding, but then transitioned to just POOLHOUSE. Obviously, you shared with us the origin story. But what difference did changing how you spoke about your firm make in the clients and projects that you got?
Yeah, it just didn't pigeonhole us as, okay, we do YouTubes and we do digital-only campaigns. It allowed it to be bigger and broader, because at the end of the day, you're not paying for one venue or one aspect. You're paying for our ideas and our hustle and our experience. And there's no reason to kind of narrow that down. So POOLHOUSE, I would like to say it's a 20-person company with a funny name, but it's actually become our strength because we're not trying to be something that we're not. And it all goes back to kind of the origin of, we think we can do this better. So let's just try.
So Will, what tips or advice would you give to an entrepreneur who is early in their career or getting ready to start their own business and is going head to head with someone who is far more experienced, has more connections, and more confidence in pitching campaigns?
I'd focus on what you do well. And even if you don't think that it is that huge, maybe it's a congressional campaign that you didn't win, but you put your heart and soul into it, and that you still believe in the strategy. Not being embarrassed to say, yeah, we weren't successful, but here's what we did and here's how we think. Let's show our work. I think that that's a key. Being humble yet proud of yourself and saying, yeah, we think that we could be the solution to the problem that you have. And we also have a benefit of the products we can show them, right? I can pull them up on the big screen and you can see the strategy and you can see how we try to make the production value and the edginess and how we take risks. It's all really demonstrable there, where people in other businesses have got to find their own way to show off what they've got. But I think politics, there's an advantage for people who are getting started out there, which is people are very interested in what's new. They're not really interested in running cookie cutters most of the time. So if you can tell people honestly what special sauce do you have and what differentiates you? That is really helpful. They have to balance that with don't just attack everything that exists and try to stay positive. Yeah, just don't be afraid. And the beginning of every political campaign, whether it's on the business side or literally on the candidate side, there's plenty of people that tell you how they've already tried what you've tried and it didn't work. And who do you think you are? And that there's one way to do it, and they happen to be the only ones that know how to do it. You just have to smile and shrug that off.
I think there's a really interesting aspect here of putting your marker down of where you think the puck is going to go and being there, right? Not chasing it, but just planting and knowing where things are going, right? So I think you and Tim had a lot of confidence in, this digital thing is going to be around. Netflix is in early days and it's not going away. Like that, people are going to be consuming really high quality video content, platform agnostic across any kind of screen. Campaigns might not be there today, but they will be soon. And so it kind of gives the appearance of like an overnight success, but really you put clear bet down on where things were going to go.
Yeah. And also that campaigns, we're going to start to look more like corporate campaigns in the sense that it would be a never-ending communication from the beginning of the campaign to the end. And gone were the days of, okay, we're going to do local grassroots events and we'll talk to the press for a year. And then, when we get within 30 days of election day, we'll splash up some ads. And that's just not the reality that we live in. People want to be fed content. If they're on your team, they want to know what's going on and they want to be updated and they want to feel like it's an ongoing conversation. So that was our bet, that basically that this timeline would stretch out and there would be such a need for high quality communication with folks that was outside of just, the 1 month before election.
So, Will, I want to pivot to some ideas now. You've just been really in the thick of a very competitive campaign. I think I saw the final certification came through 63,000 votes. So I'm curious to hear what you think near term, we're talking 2022 and 24, problems or challenges that campaigns or candidates or agencies face that would make for a good product, service, or business. Like, what's the thing that gives you a headache that you want fixed?
Polling is one. I think there's a need for more information, particularly not necessarily quantitative information, but qualitative information that is at a price point that campaigns that are in the early stages can stomach. I'm obviously more on the qualitative side of research because it is in those verbatims that you get ideas and you get a feeling for where people's heads are at. An example would be education and Glenn Youngkin. I mean, the conventional wisdom is Democrats win on education. The best you can do as a Republican is hope to not be bludgeoned to death by it, or maybe it doesn't come up. We flip that on its head because we were seeing a lot of frustration come through on this. I mean, you couldn't avoid it, but particularly in the research, there's a lot of parental frustration that was but it was nonpartisan. People didn't feel like, whether it was mass or curriculum or charter schools, they didn't feel like, the government, which, public schools are a wing of, was being responsive to them. And if you can talk to people at a cultural level about their relationship with the government and get them on your side, then really hit the beginning point, as opposed to government's downstream of politics, politics downstream of culture. So you need to talk to people about their culture and talk to people at that level. And you're going to see that if you get good qualitative data and you listen to people and not just having them rank these 5 issues. Okay, everybody ranked taxes as number 1, so I guess our campaign's about taxes. That's not going to be the way you got to do it. You got to listen to folks. So I think better technology on trying to find out where people are and find those kind of hidden issues that aren't your standard cookie cutter R versus D issues, I think that could be improved.
Yeah. So we've had a bunch of pollsters and data types on the podcast before, and we've talked about how there's a shift away from those live interview polls being the gold standard and trying to find insight. So it's interesting to think about. Maybe campaigns are over-indexing for being data-driven at the expense of losing out on emotions and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, from my side, I will say, like, on the pollsters that we worked, pollsters on Youngkin, which is WPA, they did a fantastic job. But for what we work on, it really is about a conversation with the voter or different groups of voters, which you need more qualitative data to be able to kind of understand the feeling that people have, right, beyond just checking boxes. So I think that, I would like to see more ways that you can get basically the qualitative data you get from a focus group and sitting there behind the glass. How do you how do you incorporate that at a price point that smaller campaigns can deal with? And that, I think that makes the campaign stronger and be able to be more reactive and be able to talk to people's actual concerns instead of just putting it in buckets and saying, well, I guess it's about immigration, so we'll talk immigration because everybody clicked immigration on the Google form.
Well, I'm so grateful for Will making the time to join us today. He's never shy about sharing his opinions, so you can go follow him over on Twitter. And I'll also link to POOLHOUSE in the show notes, so you can go check out their work, especially like the case study they did about Glenn Youngkin visual branding and developing that logo. So be sure and go check that out. And lastly, if today's episode made you smarter, made you think, or inspired you, please personally share it with a colleague or friend so they can also share in your inspiration. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.